Oh, wait a minute. That's not the right slide. Or that's not the right shot. There we go. All right. Here we are. We will get to that slide. Welcome in. This is the in home elderly care video series that I've been doing. For those of you out there that are looking to do in home elderly care for a loved one or a friend, could be whoever. You're navigating the process. That's what I do here each week. I'll take a subject or a just a thing that you have to consider in that process and go through it to give the audience a better idea of what they might be faced with when doing it. I cared for my aging grandmother in the last years of her life, Ruth Callis Kenton. And as you've heard me talk about, my grandparents were both in elderly care. They did it for over 30 years in Fuquay, Varina, and Lillington, North Carolina. And I grew up around it, but I wasn't very involved per se at that point, 7, 8, 9, 10, very young. But I had the opportunity to help Ruth out. And that's the piece that I'm speaking to. And that's where I'm drawing from all of this knowledge and presenting it on this channel for audience consumption and to field your questions. So we will get to that on the last slide. Speaking of slides, let me put up my slides. Okay, going back to this shot here. Today's show is called, in quotations, Old People Are Sensitive. Okay? And it's in quotations because Ruth used to say this to me all the time. And she would be speaking about herself, but it was also coming from a place of all of her experience working with elderly people. They are sensitive, she would tell me. So we're going to look at a couple of ways in which they might be sensitive. As I say every time, the list of items that I have are not comprehensive. They're just a couple conversation starters or entry points into those topics and subject matter to either get you thinking or give you some information on, or just general knowledge on whatever the subject is. So based off of what she used to say, and she had a couple of different sayings that she would say frequently, or she said frequently over the years. Old people are sensitive. I don't have a particular story offhand that I can think of a time that this occurred while she was in business. But like I was saying a moment ago, I know that the spirit of what she was saying came from that point. Because she would not say I'm sensitive. She would make a general statement about old people, and she would call them old people. I try to make it sound a little smoother. This is elderly care, right? Not aged care or old people care, elderly care, right? But Ruth would sometimes say it raw, right? Old people are sensitive. So what are the items that I've got up here that they would be sensitive to? Well, the number one thing is sensitive to change. I know that's very broad reaching. You don't have to be old to be sensitive to change. I think everyone carries with them a certain level of sensitivity to change, depending on what the change is, depending on if you want it or not, right? But she would say this, and the purpose of what we're going to talk about here is, in that realm of being elderly or assisting someone that's elderly, so sensitive to change. What would the change be? Well, one of the big changes would be the change to the customer's health, right? So you've heard me talk about, she lost her vision by the time she died. She was almost completely deaf as well. These were subtle changes that happened over time, but she was incredibly sensitive to them. She would be, especially with her vision, and I think between those two, if you had to choose, neither one of them would you want to choose. Hey, would you rather lose your vision or your hearing, right? Neither. Of course, that's the answer we would like. But if you had to choose one of them to retain, it would most likely be your vision. And her vision progressively got worse, and she was very sensitive to that. Um, her congestive heart failure grew worse. She developed problems breathing. It was very difficult for her to breathe, and she was sensitive to that. And I know that this sounds like things that you would be sensitive to anyways, just because of how detrimental that's going to be, to your experience in life. If you can't see or if you can't breathe, well, bro, you're going to have a pretty bad day. And she had several of them at the end. But again, it could be a sensitivity to anything, a change in the house. Okay, so we're gonna switch the furniture around, right? Well, we didn't do that, but just using it as an example. No, no, man, that's not gonna fly. This is the way the furniture's been for 50 years. I like it this way. The only thing we ever did using this example in that regard was to actually remove furniture, and that was just to remove barriers of things that she might run into, or could be tripping hazards, that kind of thing. But to take the couch or something like that and flip it on the other side of the room, and then to move the TV and put it in the other corner of the room or something like that. No, no. She was sensitive to those kind of things. As a matter of fact, she was sensitive. And if you've ever experienced a death, a close death, I'm sure you can understand it. I can understand it. She was sensitive to keeping things in the house pretty much the way they were as it was when my grandfather died. She didn't want to change anything. So nothing really. There was one point a couple years ago, speaking of a couch, we bought a new couch, but it was almost a like to like transaction. It was the same size couch. It had or it was a love seat that had the legs that popped out and elevated up, and the back that reclined back. But it was the same basic shape. It went in the same place that the old one went. And the only reason we did that is because she liked to have her feet up, and the old one broke, and she was not able to put her feet up anymore. So we actually had to make that change. But outside of that, there were no changes made. Sensitivities, and again, these are just off anecdotal examples that I'm giving. But they're going to be sensitive to change. If you're going through this and you're navigating that, just know that something that you might be perceiving as small is not going to be that way to the customer. Again, if you're in the situation that I was in, which I was living with her in her home where she lived for probably 70 plus years, something in that regard, they're going to be the customer's going to be very sensitive to change. The second change piece that I've got, or sensitivity piece that I've got, is sensitive to people. Okay, she was sensitive about the way she interacted with people and the way people interacted with her. So one of the last year she was alive, she stayed at the home 24/7. She didn't go out at all. But the years leading up there, she would still go out to events, or she would still try and be as sociable as she could be. Somebody's getting married, a grandchild is getting married or something like that. Okay, well, she's going to go to that event. And one of the last events that she went to, and I can't remember if it was that or if it was a family function or something, but she, again, with her hearing and her vision, so it was a two-part thing. She couldn't do crowds because when she went into crowds, her hearing aids would just pick up everything, and she couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. It would disorient her, and then people would get right up on her and say hello to her, and she would have to pantomime or BS a little bit, like she knew who was talking to her or what they were saying or whatever, because she was embarrassed to either not know who the individual was or not be able to hear them. And it's not that she didn't know who they were, it's that people would go up not understanding her condition and then not introduce themselves to her. Hi, Ruth, this is Mike, your nephew. Something, oh, Mike, okay, great. Yeah, I know who you are. Yeah. But they would just go up and, hey, Ruth, how you doing? And just jump right into the middle of a conversation. And she couldn't hear well and she couldn't see them well. She couldn't recognize them. And so she would have to do this pantomime thing where she would just give these general answers for everything. Ruth, how are you doing? Yes. Right? You understand what I'm saying? So take a guess at what an appropriate response would be for whoever was talking to her. But she was sensitive to that and embarrassed by that she wasn't able to recognize people. And it's difficult. Look, it's difficult to be going through something that's so debilitating, but then it's difficult for your condition to be out on the street and everyone know about it and everyone be talking about it, or possibly be talking about it. And so she didn't necessarily want to let the outside world know how serious the condition had gotten, and it was difficult for her. Okay, so know that your customer is going to be sensitive to dealing with other people, especially if they have this type of condition, something that's actually taking away their senses and taking away modes of communication and how they can interact with others. Sensitive to routine. Okay, she had her routine. She did not like to deviate. We tried not to deviate, and any deviation would cause a panic's too strong of a word. Not cause a panic, but it would cause some sort of apprehension on her end. Okay, so if it was in the morning, she gets up out of bed. Someone helps her up, and she puts her glasses on, and then she puts her hearing aids in, and then she puts her eye drops in, and then she goes to the bathroom, and then she goes to the couch, and she wants a cup of decaf coffee with 1 cream and 2 Splendas, and then she wants to sit on the couch and turn on the news and watch and listen to the news through her headphones. She had a set of headphones that assisted her in hearing, and she wanted to sit there until the next caretaker came in, who would then take her to the table and make her breakfast, which would be a bowl of grits or oatmeal or an egg or something that was in her routine of items. And then she would eat that, she would receive her medications, and just on through the day went like this. And this is what every day looked like, every single day. And any deviation from that would be, any deviation would be met with a natural disagreement, because she didn't like the change. She was sensitive to the change of routine. And the same thing in the evenings. Nightly news, Jeopardy, headphones off, sit there for about 20 minutes, take her nighttime medication, and then to bed, or walk her to the bathroom, walk her to the bedside table. She takes her glasses off, she takes her hearing aids out, she takes her vest off, she lays down, and then that's where she is. That's the day. That's the routine. Okay? So did not like to deviate from the routine at all. Your customer will be sensitive to that. All right? Sensitive to hygiene. So this is something that she had mentioned to me several times throughout the years. And she said it like generally, like for her, it was a concern, but she said that old people in general are sensitive to this, and that's sensitive to hygiene, and that's their own personal hygiene. She got to a point where she stopped taking showers, and she would do what she called a bird bath. So she would have water drawn in the sink, and she would be able to wash herself, okay? And then it got to a point where she needed assistance washing herself, washing and dressing herself. And she was sensitive to not smelling good, not looking presentable, having bad breath, having well, I said not smelling good, so like body odor or something like that, just any kind of thing that would make her hygiene appear unkempt, because she, like it is for any of us, right? You live, whatever it is, you live 70 years, 80 years, and you're doing all this stuff yourself, and so that you know that it's good. And even, some people have better hygiene than others, of course, but you at least know, even if your hygiene is not good, you at least have some kind of understanding that it's not good. But when you lose your ability to do that, then you're lost, and you don't have a point of reference of, like, if you're not showering and you're doing these smaller bath things, like, did that really get me clean? Do I smell? Can someone else smell me? What, like my, she had a partial denture and had several issues that she had to have taken care of with her teeth. She wanted to know that she was presentable, even if she was going to the sofa to spend her day, which is what she did most days, especially the last couple of years. Sitting there on the sofa, she still wanted to be presentable. She still had a sensitivity to her hygiene, and she was telling me, or she alluded to, this is a common thing in the elderly world. People being sensitive to their hygiene, and she must have seen it, or she must have had an experience or several experiences when she was doing elderly care professional that led her to this conclusion. Okay, so again, just a couple of things today, very broad overview, things that are not a complete list and could be delved into a lot deeper. But for the purposes of this, we just look at these basic items and kind of go through and break down a little bit of it. So keep in mind, your customer will be sensitive, okay? And it might not be a bad thing, all right? I'm glad she was sensitive to these things, looking back. There were things, talking about sensitive to change. I mean, that's very broad. There were some things she was sensitive to on change, and it would have been maybe easier if she wasn't. But being sensitive to how people are around her and how she is to people, sensitive to her routine and sensitive to her hygiene, I'm very thankful she was that present of mind to have that, and then to share that with me, that this has been her entire experience working with elderly people, because now I'm able to put it in video form and share it with you all. So I'll go to my last slide on that, which is questions. If you have questions about doing in-home elderly care, send it to me. Let's talk about it. I want to give you an answer. Mario at thealphaitalian.com. Give me your name and location, and I'll bring it on the show and discuss it, break it down. All right. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a blessed day, and I will see you next time.